Well, hello, everyone around the world, wherever you might be. I am Jay Campbell, and I am joined today in my virtual studio by a very, very brilliant woman and researcher. Her name is Doris, if I pronounce this right, La. Is that correct?
You know, you're the only person who actually pronounced my last name correct. I was actually going to ask you how you got the pronunciation. What you said is the Mandarin pronunciation of my surname, Le. So Doris Le is actually the correct way to say it. But most Americans, they would say Doris Lowe, and I'm so used to it. But when I heard you mention my name the first time, you said Doris Le, I said, oh my God, he actually got it right.
Well, I'm glad that I did that. But you guys, let me just tell you guys a little bit about her bio real quick. We're very blessed and privileged and humbled to have her here today. She's an independent researcher and writer specializing in the investigation of familiar and innovative health topics using unique perspectives in traditional and quantum biology. She's actually a trained classical pianist, but this has allowed her the freedom to explore concepts and theories with a curiosity that often results in very distinctive conclusions. She's written some amazing things. I'm going to actually share at the end of this where you guys can find much more about her research. She's written about 5G and the vitamin C connection. I mean, there's so many other articles that she's written. I wrote a blog earlier this morning linking to all of her previous publications and articles that she's written. Again, she's written so prolifically, and it's an honor to have her here today. So with that said, Doris, I'm going to turn this over to you. Now, everybody, there's a lot of people watching. So if you guys have questions, okay, we will get to them at the end, but I ask you right now to allow her to share her presentation, her slide deck, and I will moderate the discussion. I know there's going to be a ton of questions, but please, it's very, very important that you share this information with your family, your friends, loved ones, and especially people in the medical community, because this is definitely an intervention that works. And with that said, without further ado, Doris, please take over.
Thank you, Jay. I'm really honored to be here today with you and Dr. Wilgers for this important live stream event. Now, my last research paper explained why I believe oral ascorbic acid is different from buffered forms like sodium ascorbate used predominantly in IVC injections. Today, I will explain why I believe we must use ascorbic acid in the oral form to combat COVID-19. All the information today has not been covered before, so I will try to focus on only the new information and be brief on things that the audience are familiar with, like ARDS, acute respiratory distress syndrome.
Awesome.
Like you said, if anybody in the audience has trouble following the flow, please don't worry. I will do a final summary at the end for everyone, and you will have a chance to ask questions on things that are not clear. So I'm going to go to screen share now so you can follow the script a little bit better. Hold on.
So if you guys have just checked on or logged on, questions and answers, I promise will come here at the end of this broadcast.
Okay.
Here we go. Okay, here we go.
I'm going to go to full screen so that everyone gets a better look. Okay, here we go. This is the title today, COVID-19, ARDS, and cytokine storms. And the focus is actually on the recycling of ascorbic acid by immune cells like macrophages, neutrophils, and lymphocytes. My latest research shows that all the mechanisms used by COVID-19 to attack the body actually involves the depletion of ascorbic acid. The depletion of ascorbic acid results in the failure of the immune system that leads to severe and often lethal pathologies such as ARDS, sepsis, multiple organ failure in COVID-19 patients. Today's presentation will show how ascorbic acid deficiency in white blood cells like macrophages, neutrophils, and lymphocytes result in their dysfunction. Now, these cells, macrophages, neutrophils, and lymphocytes, they all produce cytokines. Cytokine storms from immune cell dysfunctions actually contribute to the collapse of the immune system, and that is the ultimate cause of fatality in COVID-19. As we all know, COVID-19 patients, if they are affected severely, they get ARDS. And when you get ARDS, you will not be able to breathe. Your lungs are going to be filled with liquid, and you have low oxygen, and you will be requiring mechanical ventilation, intubation, ICU care. And this is actually what is happening that is overwhelming the hospital healthcare systems all over the world. They have so many people that require ICU care, and there's not enough medical supplies, medical attention, and workers to deal with these explosion of COVID-19 patients that require ICU care.
Right.
So, okay, very quickly. When you have ARDS, you will have low oxygen, low nitric oxide. Remember this, very important, low nitric oxide. You have high sepsis and high inflammatory biomarkers. And the higher the inflammatory biomarkers you have, the higher your mortality rate and the increased need for the use of ventilators. And what does ARDS do to your lungs? Now, this is a very interesting development. A patient can test negative for COVID-19 but show abnormal lung CT scans. This is a CT scan for a person with ground glass opacities who are asymptomatic. They don't show any symptoms, but their lungs are damaged. Now, a regular CT of lung is like this, black. There's no opacities. But when you have ARDS from COVID-19, you get these patches of opacities. That in the CT is not going to be black.
So Doris, real quick, just to clear things up for people, a lot of people who are watching now and around the world have they presume that this is not a issue, ARDS, if you're younger. Can you clarify just a little bit of that? This is absolutely, it can affect anyone at any age.
Anyone at any age. A paper out of Germany, the doctor said, young, healthy professionals, they get pneumonia and their lungs are affected. Right. And in Hong Kong, they tracked people who recovered from COVID-19. They have lost 20 to 30% of lung capacity. I mean, this thing is scary. Okay. Right. And you can be asymptomatic and your lung cells are destroyed. And I will tell you why. Now, the SARS-CoV-2, now that is the name of the virus. The disease caused by SARS-CoV-2 is COVID-19. And so when I say SARS-CoV-2, I'm talking about the coronavirus, the name of the coronavirus. The SARS-CoV-2 virus uses a multi-pronged strategic attack system. Everyone is probably familiar with the spike protein that binds to ACE2 receptors. This is the primary mechanism that SARS-CoV-2 used to attack lungs, because in the lungs, ACE2 is concentrated in a small population of type 2 alveolar cells, AT2. And these alveolar cells, what they do is they actually increase the expression of viral replication and transmission. So once SARS-CoV-2 hits your lung, it's going to explode because of these spike proteins that bind to ACE2 that are particularly concentrated in AT2 cells that will also increase the expression. That's why lungs are affected so much. Now, the SARS-CoV-2 spike protein must be cleaved by furin enzymes for activation. Furin enzymes not only activate SARS-CoV-2, they also activate important biomolecules like growth factors, hormones, and pro-inflammatory cytokines. Then the next one is what's interesting. Besides spike protein, SARS-CoV-2 uses viral porins. And the two important viral porins, the main ones, is viral porin E and ORF3A. What they do, these viral porins, is they insert ion channels in plasma membranes, and they go inside and increase viral replication. So these viral porins are very important because viral porin activities is actually how these vicious cycles of cytokine storms start. Now, when this paper hit the press on March 23rd, it changed my whole conception and understanding of the SARS-CoV-2 virus. They actually use viral porins to attack hemoglobin and create cell-free hemoglobin to cause ARDS. What the SARS-CoV-2 viral porins do is they target and attack hemoglobin. Now, after they attack the hemoglobin, you end up with cells that are not stable, heme cells that are not stable. And these heme cells, they actually decimate nitric oxide. And cell-free heme, they don't carry oxygen. And that is the reason why once you get SARS-CoV-2 attacking your cells and attacking your heme, people start to have episodes when they can't breathe. That's the first thing. They have tight chest, they can't breathe, they feel dizzy. It comes and goes, but that's the first thing, you can't breathe. And what happens when you have low oxygen? It activates the hypoxia pathways. Hypoxia activates one protein called HIF-1 alpha, hypoxia-inducible factor 1 alpha. When this complex gets stabilized, it activates a lot of genes to help the body deal with low oxygen. And guess what? One of the things it activates? It activates the gene expression of furin enzymes. So when SARS-CoV-2 attacks your heme and makes you low, makes the heme like unstable and unable to carry oxygen, it actually initiates a pathway that will create more furin enzymes to activate more SARS-CoV-2. Now, is that scary or what?
Yeah.
And more SARS-CoV-2 virus will end up with more cytokines. And I will explain that later. Okay, now, so why do COVID-19 create porphyrins? Porphyrins are these hemes that don't have iron. Why do they use this mechanism to create porphyrins? Oops. Okay. What you're looking at on the top right corner, that little round pizza looking like red thing, that's your red blood cell. Inside are a lot of molecules, and they're called hemoglobin. This complex is your hemoglobin complex. There are 4 units, alpha chains and beta chains. Each chain contains 1 heme, and in the center of each heme is an iron, and this iron has to be in the ferrous reduced state to carry oxygen. If it is oxidized, the heme, the whole complex will get destabilized. All the hemes are going to run loose and become free cell heme, and you won't and the hemoglobin will not carry oxygen anymore. It is like basically useless. So what happens with these viral porins? ORF3A, viral porin here. They attack the beta chain. They oxidize the iron inside the beta chain, kicks it out or dislodges it and slips right in. And when that happens is you get these porphyrins that are now like Trojan horses carrying this ORF2 protein going all around your body, and porphyrins can attach to cell membranes. And that's how the virus actually gets into all kinds of cells using porphyrins.
Right. Such a great topic.
No, I mean, this virus is like really ingenious, and it's.
You mean
like,
it's a bioweapon?
I'm not going to comment. I'm just trying to analyze what this virus does, and that's what's important. We deal with this virus, whether it's a weapon or not, or maybe it's a bioweapon from nature. You know. Okay, now this viroporin that attacks heme and create porphyrins that can go around the body carrying the SARS-CoV virus to infect cells is in addition to the spike 2 ACE2 receptor mechanism. And this is the reason why COVID-19 patients have very, very low levels of normal heme, while their serum ferritin level is significantly elevated. And this is also why COVID-19 patients show high levels of creatinine, because high serum ferritin is correlated with acute kidney failure.
Right.
And why is there a lot of ferritin? Because ferritin is used by our bodies to bind free iron. Remember, the ORF3A viroporin kicks out that iron center, that iron in the center of the heme, and you have all these free iron running around, and they must be captured by ferritin to make them harmless. So I'm actually now going to talk to you about a paper that discusses artificial intelligence model used to predict the susceptibility of patients to ARDS. What they did is they analyzed the information features, clinical features of like 70 to 80,000 patients, and they found that and could predict with 70 to 80% accuracy that if you have the following features, you are likely to develop serious ARDS. And what they found is, number one on the list, mild elevation of ALT. ALT is an enzyme that is elevated when your liver is injured. And the second one is myalgia. That's the muscle pain that happens when you are iron deficient.
Right. People get fibromyalgia. Correct.
Absolutely. And then the last one is elevated hemoglobin. Now, elevated hemoglobin can be deceptive because when you have a lot of free cell heme, you will also have a lot of hemoglobin.
Right.
Now, this liver injury aspect is very, very important because when they compared people with non-severe COVID to people with severe COVID, they found that all these liver enzyme, AST, ALT, is much higher in people with severe symptoms. Now, why is the liver damaged? Because liver is actually a regulator of iron. Right. And when you have iron dysregulation, the liver goes into overdrive to try and control the damage. And to control the damage, the liver produces haptoglobin, which binds free toxic oxidized heme. And haptoglobin is predominantly found in hepatic macrophages, which engulf the free heme and metabolize them so that the ferric ion can be incorporated into ferritin. And this is the part where I start to talk about why the anti-malaria drug chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine has now actually been approved by the FDA to be used by hospitalized patients with COVID-19. Chloroquine has been used around the world, especially in countries like China, Japan, France, and South Korea, to combat COVID-19 with great success. Now, chloroquine is an anti-malaria drug. What links malaria to COVID-19? The malaria parasite infects hosts by digesting hemoglobin and releasing oxidized free heme. Sounds familiar to you now? Except the malaria parasite, they are able to engulf the free heme to make it not toxic to them. And what chloroquine does, it binds to the toxic free heme, enhancing its toxicity while interfering with the ability of the malaria parasite to sequester and neutralize that toxic free heme. So in severe malaria, you always see multi-organ failure as a result of liver toxicity caused by excessive accumulation of free heme in the liver. There's a study that infected mice with the malaria parasite, and on day 8, look at the extent of the liver damage with the high levels of ALT and AST. This is mice on day 1, AST. On day 8, look at these numbers. Free heme just decimates your liver. So liver is probably the start of heme destruction and the perfect cytokine storm. Because when you have free heme, you will end up with excess ferritin, and with excess ferritin, you always have macrophages, because macrophages is what is necessary to make the ferritin, to carry and engulf the heme to make them not toxic. And when you have excess macrophages, you end up with cytokine storms. And now I will explain to you why.
So let me ask you a real quick question. Stop you.
Yes.
On the ARDSAcute, a lot of people are going to ask, it's been rumored, it's like an old wives' tale already, that tonic water with quinine in it is also a potential, over-the-counter remedy. Now, I want you to just say yes or no. Is that remotely possible? Because obviously not everyone is able to get ARDSAcute. And as the system fails, down the road from here, they won't be able to. So what is your take on that?
If you have ascorbic acid, take ascorbic acid instead.
Okay. That's what I thought, because I did want to mention that, and I know you know this, but ARDSAcute produces some really nasty side effects.
Yes. But the thing is, if you don't have ascorbic acid and that's your only choice and remedy, go for it, because it'll save your life. You won't be dead. Exactly. But you have to deal with consequences, and that's another story.
I love you, Doris. Okay, continue.
Okay. Now, we're going to talk about iron and macrophages and how they create cytokine storms. One ferritin molecule can sequester oxidized free iron. It can hold like 4,500 of them. And when you have hyperferritinemia, that is when you have excess ferritin, you will always see in the patient significant macrophage activation, and they always result in higher mortality rates. And when these two are seen together, high macrophage and high ferritin, you always see elevated cytokines like interleukin-1 alpha, tumor necrosis factor alpha, interleukin-2, 6, 10, and 18. Now, what is really scary is that elevated ferritin levels now can actually predict the fatality levels of COVID-19 patients, where they found non-survivors have a mean elevated ferritin level of close to 1,300 nanograms per milliliter, doubling those in survivors. That means if you have high ferritin, good luck to you.
Right. And who is a person, so just to real quickly, who is a person that has high ferritin naturally? A very infirmed person, but like specifically, we're talking about like really advanced stage diabetics, insulin resistance, right?
Yes, inflammation, right. Yes.
Yeah.
And recently, COVID-19 disease severity is correlated to these cytokines, including TNF alpha, interleukin 2, 6, and 10 together with lymphocyte and neutrophil counts. Now that is interesting. Now we're going to talk about macrophages, lymphocytes, and neutrophils and their relationship to ascorbic acid. Look at this chart. This is a chart of peritoneal cells. Peritoneal cells are a collection of immune cells taken from mice after they're exposed to oxidative stress. This is the total. The solid line is lymphocytes, and the striped lines are macrophages. At hour 12, look, boom, they really take up a lot of ascorbic acid. Now, macrophages can actually recycle high quantities of ascorbic acid. When you have ascorbic acid outside the cell of a macrophage, when the macrophage is exposed to oxidative stress, it will pick up ascorbic at rates of up to 100-fold. That much.
Wow.
Yes, and there are two forms of ascorbic acid that you see here, DHA and ASC, which is the natural anionic form of ascorbic acid, which is ascorbate. So macrophages would take in DHA, which is the 2-electron oxidation product, meaning it's lost 2 electrons already. It's completely oxidized. Now, this is going to be interesting. Why would they want to take, if ascorbic acid is an antioxidant, why would macrophage want to take up a completely oxidized form of ascorbic acid? Right. They take up a lot of DHA and they take in ascorbate, and they use glutathione to regenerate the DHA and turning it back into ascorbate and transport it back out. I'll leave you here with that for now. Now, as I mentioned before, cell-free heme destroys nitric oxide at up to 1,000 times faster than normal heme. That's why COVID-19 patients with hypertension are at higher risk due to the decimation of nitric oxide. The depletion of nitric oxide causes vasoconstriction and cardiovascular distress. And 90% of inpatients with pneumonia have been found with increased coagulation activity because of depletion in nitric oxide. And loss of nitric oxide actually also reduces the ability to suppress viral replication. And it is also the main reason for the failure of the immune system. And I will explain why next. Macrophages, they depend on ascorbic acid to generate nitric oxide. That's why they take in the DHA, turn it back into ascorbic acid, and uses 1 electron to reduce BH4 to create nitric oxide. I will explain that in detail later on. Why do macrophages need nitric oxide? Now, this is the key part, and this is where the breakdown happens. Macrophages use nitric oxide to generate what is known as an oxidative burst. This oxidative burst is so lethal that it kills practically everything around it. That's how macrophages use oxidative bursts to kill pathogens. But then, interestingly, it is also a negative feedback loop where that oxidative burst kills monocytes, and monocytes are parents of macrophages. That's why you hear the term monocyte-dependent macrophage as opposed to bone marrow-dependent monocytes. These are two different types of macrophage. So if macrophages are unable to generate enough lethal oxidative bursts due to a lack of nitric oxide because they don't have enough ascorbic acid, not only are they unable to kill pathogens around them, their numbers will keep on increasing because there is no negative feedback loop of the monocytes that produce them. Are you following me, Jay?
I am. Absolutely. Whether the audience is or not, I don't know, but I'm definitely.
I mean, this virus is like amazing.
Yeah.
So nitric oxide deficiency in macrophages from insufficient ascorbic acid is probably one of the reasons how cytokine storms are exacerbated in COVID-19. And that is also why you are now seeing a lot of hospitals and a lot of clinical trial applications on using nitric oxide. And lo and behold, nitric oxide-derived macrophages are found in extremely high levels in severe ARDS cases in COVID-19. NLRP3 inflammasomes, they are the cause for cytokines, and macrophages are the source for NLRP3 inflammasome activation and cytokine interleukin 1 beta secretion. Now, for many years, people thought bone marrow derived macrophages are the source for the activation of NLRP3 inflammasome. But recently, there was a study that showed definitively that they were wrong. It is monocyte-derived macrophages that are responsible for the activation of inflammasomes and the cytokine interleukin 1 beta. And SARS-CoV-2 virus, coronaviruses use viroporins to activate NLRP3 inflammasome so that they can increase viral replication and dissemination. Now, these are the same monocyte-derived macrophages that are produced in the liver as a result of self-reheat. So, if monocyte-derived macrophages are unable to complete that negative feedback loop that kills the monocytes, terminating macrophage production, more inflammasomes will be activated and the cytokine storm will continue uncontrolled.
So let me hammer that point home. So guys, when you have an uncontrolled cytokine storm in your tissue, you are at extreme risk for all sorts of, basically physical breakdown. If you're an inflamed person and you're having a massive cytokine storm, then you can literally have a heart attack, an embolism, a stroke. I mean, I can name 100 other things that can happen to you. So what she's saying is you have to stop the cytokine storms when you are at an advanced stage of having COVID. And obviously C does that. Anyway, continue.
Right. Okay. So now I'm going to tell you why you absolutely need ascorbic acid and ascorbic acid only for nitric oxide, and why macrophages take up so much ascorbic acid and they have nothing to show for it because they use it all up to produce nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is produced in nitric oxide synthase, and the rate-limiting enzyme is tetrahydrobiopterin, BH4. Now, BH4 must be maintained in a specific reduced state. Otherwise, it will be, after it donates an electron to nitric oxide synthase, it will become oxidized and become BH3. And if at this point you don't have ascorbic acid to regenerate BH3 back into BH4, BH3 will continue to oxidize and become BH2. And this is very, very bad because no, did I say BH4? BH3, if you don't regenerate BH3, it will become BH2, which is very, very bad because BH2 can completely uncouple the nitric oxide synthase production. You will not be able to produce nitric oxide anymore once you get BH2. And that is why you must have ascorbic acid in nitric oxide production to regenerate BH4. And there are studies that show that other antioxidants like thiols, such as glutathione, are completely ineffective in regenerating BH4. The cells just need ascorbic acid. And that's why when you buy BH4 as a supplement, you will always see ascorbic acid added together. Okay. Now, neutrophils, that's another immune white blood cell. Neutrophils, they also use nitric oxide for oxidative bursts. Interestingly, severe COVID-19 patients have increasingly high levels of neutrophils while their lymphocytes plummet.
Wow.
Now, neutrophils, they kill pathogens by generating oxidative bursts using nitric oxide and superoxide. They have two mechanisms. Now, nitric oxide is very important here. Nitric oxide can protect endothelial cells, which are cell linings, especially those in your lungs, from damage by these activated neutrophils, because neutrophils can stick to these endothelial cells and cause damage if there is not enough nitric oxide. And when neutrophils themselves do not have enough nitric oxide, they are unable to migrate and kill pathogens. So they're just sort of stuck in one place and damaging your cell walls and causing inflammation. Now, this is interesting. Neutrophils, like ascorbic acid, like macrophages, they also recycle ascorbic acid for nitric oxide and glutathione. Neutrophils, they actually store a huge amount of ascorbic acid to regenerate BH4, and they also use DHA to generate glutathione. Now look at this chart. This graph here is actually the level of DHA being taken into the cells of a neutrophil when you have both ascorbate and DHA outside. This is ascorbate. They don't like ascorbate as much. They rather take DHA. And this is the level of DHA that can increase if the amount outside the cell is increased. That means if you give them more DHA outside, they will take in as much as you give them.
Right.
Now, this is the chart that shows what neutrophils do to DHA and ascorbic acid. This is DHA outside the cell and inside the cell. And this is ascorbic acid outside the cell and inside the cell. That means as they take in DHA and the DHA levels outside the cell diminish, the level of their ascorbic acid inside the cell actually increases. That means they actually regenerate the DHA after they take it in. Now, why do they love DHA so much? Well, DHA has been shown in cells to stimulate G6PD enzymes. You're familiar with G6PD, right? Everybody says, oh, if I have G6PD deficiency, I can't take ascorbic acid because it's going to decimate my glutathione and I don't have enough NADPH to regenerate glutathione. Well, wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, neutrophils, they need nitric oxide as well as glutathione to help them move around to different areas to kill pathogens. And neutrophils maintain glutathione in the reduced state using NADPH produced in the pentose phosphate pathway, where G6PD enzyme is the rate limiting factor. Now, in addition, I mentioned superoxide before, right?
Yep.
Neutrophils need G6PD to produce NADPH to make superoxide, because with superoxide, they can make these nets or extracellular traps that can engulf and kill microorganisms and inhibit their dissemination. Now, in the first chart a while back that showed lymphocytes and macrophages, lymphocytes also accumulate high levels of ascorbic. This is a chart showing the level of glutathione, this axis, and ascorbic. So the more ascorbic you have, the more glutathione you have. And this is animal models. When you supplement them with ascorbic, their glutathione shoots way up. In T lymphocytes, T cells, when you give them dehydroascorbic, they actually get a lot of glutathione because dehydroascorbic actually can increase G6PD protein expression in lymphocytes by close to 6-fold. That results in a 3.3-fold increase in glutathione. Is that impressive? And if you treat the cell with NAC and acetylcysteine, NAC could only increase glutathione by 2-fold. And the fascinating thing is, all COVID-19 patients have lymphopenia, low lymphocytes. All severe cases have low lymphocytes.
By the way, let me ask you a question real quick on that, because I've had a lot of friends that have been asking me this question, and it's perfect timing. As you know, a lot of people in the medical systems across the world have been diagnosed with pneumonia and not been diagnosed with COVID in the last, let's say, 2.5 months. How many people that were diagnosed with pneumonia actually had COVID, but they just didn't have a test or an awareness of it at that point, in your perspective?
That's a good question. I think it is very likely that those people who had pneumonia have COVID-19. Right. But let me show you. If they did a blood test, they probably would be able to tell whether they had COVID-19 or not, because this test actually compared lymphocyte counts in pneumonia patients that were caused by COVID and those that are just got normal pneumonia not caused by COVID-19.
Right.
In COVID-19 infected patients with pneumonia, they have a much lower lymphocyte count compared to patients with pneumonia that is not caused by COVID-19.
Right.
And the thing is, the ratio of neutrophils and lymphocytes, they must be balanced. Now, this is the scary part. COVID-19 patients over the age of 50 with neutrophil lymphocyte ratio over 3.13 are correlated with severe illness that must be admitted to ICU.
Wow.
Yeah. So that ratio is very, very important.
Now, is that ratio affected obviously by lifestyle more than anything else? I mean, I would assume that it is, but obviously we do know that there are healthy people that still, if it advances or progresses to a certain stage, then that ventilator is almost mandatory, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Now, I think I missed a slide somewhere, but I'll just describe what that slide was saying.
Right.
Now, that neutrophil and lymphocyte count ties also back to ascorbic acid, because remember, ascorbic acid increases glutathione. And when lymphocytes, they don't have enough glutathione, their numbers will plummet by 75% in just 3 days.
Wow.
So if you don't have ascorbic acid to make glutathione for lymphocytes, you will not have lymphocytes. And then your neutrophils are going to be all the way up there, and your lymphocyte count is going to go all the way down.
Right.
And that is why I'm advocating a combination of oral ascorbic acid and IV sodium ascorbate for COVID-19 infection. Now.
Okay, so let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
This is very important.
Okay.
And I know this is a question that people have on their mind, and I've seen it already asked a number of times. So when this gets worse, assuming it gets worse, and if you listen to people on the front lines, it's getting worse in America. And this is not fear. This is information. This is the most brilliant researcher in the world that I'm interviewing right now talking about how to use vitamin C. But for people, let's fast forward, Doris, 3 or 4 weeks from now, wherever they are in the world, especially in the United States, and let's say the medical system is gone, and meaning that if you go there, it's going to be chaos. Can people still use in their home high dosages of C versus not having an IV drip? Because obviously very few people will have access to a drip.
Right. Now, in my mind, as soon as you're infected, if you take oral ascorbic acid, you may never get to the stage where you need an IV drip.
And that's the most important
IV drips are only for people in critical care.
Right.
That have lost a lot of functions and they can't breathe and their lungs collapsed and they probably can't even take oral ascorbic acid. So giving them drip is going to revive them so that to the point that they can start taking oral ascorbic acid. And when you give them oral ascorbic acid, they're going to recover at twice the rate. I mean, maybe even 3 times. I'm just so sure about this.
Let me repeat what you said. And obviously, I've been pushing your stuff so hard for the last 2 weeks. Use vitamin C, everyone, right now.
Ascorbic acid.
Yes. Make sure that you have ascorbic acid and that you're using this right now, okay, as a preventative. And we'll get the dosages and stuff by the end of your presentation, but just you won't have to worry about it if you're using it.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so the difference between oral ascorbic acid and IV sodium ascorbate is actually the pH. Ascorbic acid, the pH is about 1.0 to 2.5, and sodium ascorbate, the pH is high, 5.6 to about 7. And in your blood, you can't really inject ascorbic acid because it's too acidic. So you need something with a high pH to mesh with the physiological pH of the blood. But that is not the only difference. Molecular structure. Ascorbic acid has 6 carbons, 7 hydrogens, and 6 oxygen atoms. Sodium ascorbate has 6 carbons, 7 hydrogens, 6 oxygen, and 1 extra sodium atom that replaces the 8th hydrogen in its parent. This is the extra sodium ion. And it actually makes a whole lot of difference because it makes the molecule a lot more reactive. It changes the reduction potential. And until this earth-shattering to me paper came out, I had no evidence to say that the body, human body, cannot use sodium ascorbate in the same way as ascorbic acid, in that we regenerate and recycle as sodium ascorbate. This is that groundbreaking, earth-shattering paper by Dr. Owen Fonarow and Dr. Stephen Hickey, released on March 13 in the Townsend Letter. What they did is something really ingenious. Now, ascorbic acid is produced from glucose, and that's why sometimes when you use glucose meters, you get false readings because it's picking up ascorbic acid. So they used this feature and measured minute-to-minute fluctuations in the blood. Now, this is very important because nobody has ever measured minute-to-minute fluctuations. And all the readings taken before on ascorbic acid could be misrepresented because you could be measuring the amount in the blood when all the ascorbic acid is taken up by all your cells and not yet released. And why am I saying that? Now, this is a chart of ascorbic acid and sodium ascorbate. Both are oral, taken in 10 grams in one go. This is the 2nd minute mark. Look at how much ascorbic acid goes into your blood. Boom, 2 minutes, 2 minutes, 2 minutes. Second minute, the minute you take it, it goes whoom, goes into your blood. And then what happens? It disappears. What happened to it? Well, all the cells took it up to use it. And then they regenerate and release it back. And that's why you see this whoops, it goes up again. But then the successive peaks and valleys, they diminish because at some point you're going to use it up and you can't regenerate it. So that's why you have successive peaks and valleys of diminishing intensities. Now, this is the price chart. Sodium ascorbate IV and ascorbic acid taken on 3 occasions in the same person. Look at how much ascorbic acid goes into your blood on minute 2. Boom! Then it goes way down. So if you took a reading of ascorbate in the 14th minute, you're going to say, oh, IV sodium ascorbate is much higher than ascorbic acid. Well, yeah, you're measuring it at the wrong time. And look, regeneration, reuse, regeneration. This is why I firmly believe that our body can only regenerate and reuse ascorbic acid. This is that beautiful, beautiful chart, and I love Dr. Frohner and Dr. Hickey for the rest of my life for doing this. I mean, I'm serious. I mean, they are heroes. I mean, they are going to change also molecular medicine. I mean, I'm serious.
Doris, in case you don't know, you're a hero too.
No, I'm not. I'm just like,
you know. Oh yeah, you are, dude. Sorry.
No, I'm not. I'm just using the work, the lifelong dedication, that work produced by other people, and just putting it together. I'm just a messenger.
You're standing on shoulders of giants, right?
No, I'm nobody. Forget me. Just get this information, spread it out, and save lives, Jay. I mean, this is going to save lives.
You are. So continue.
Okay. So I've explained all that. I did it. Okay, ascorbic acid, they cannot be replaced by similar molecules, including sodium ascorbate, due to its unique molecular structure. And now I'm going to show you some really fascinating photos. Remember the hypoxia pathway, where HIF1A is activated when you don't have oxygen, and this HIF1A can increase the expression of furin enzymes, and furin enzymes are what's needed to cleave the spike protein of SARS-CoV-2. In order to stop the process of HIF1A, ascorbic acids must be docked inside the complex. And this will start the degradation of HIF1A. And what is beautiful about this study is they took ascorbic acid in the L-ascorbate form. Now, a lot of people say, oh, what is L-ascorbate? L-ascorbate is a natural form that is found in nature. And anything you buy on the market is going to be L-ascorbic acid. You cannot get D-ascorbic acid because this is totally synthetic and needs to be created in the lab. And if you buy it, it's going to cost you an arm and a leg. So you're never going to get D-ascorbate. But these scientists, they use D-ascorbate because it's a mirror image of L-ascorbate. It's exactly the same, except it's flipped around. And it doesn't fit. Absolutely doesn't fit. And I'll show you. Whoop. Right, and they also show that the HIF protein does not respond to other antioxidants like NAC, only L-ascorbate. Okay, a perfect docking of L-ascorbic acid and D-ascorbate. Look, it's all crooked, doesn't fit. Fit? No fit. Okay, let me breathe. Is your head spinning, Jay?
No, I mean, honestly, like I thought it may be spinning a little bit more, but I think you've done an amazing job. We've kept a couple.
Really? Oh,
We've
thank
kept a
you.
couple hundred people watching live. I've been watching the numbers. There's been no deviation. The comments are amazing. There's a lot of questions. So when you're ready, you want me to go ahead and bring Dr. Wilgers on?
Yes. He can make comments, and I will summarize and then go into the recommendations for both oral and IV.
Beautiful. Because we have to let the doctor. Okay, cool. No, but keep going. He'll come in when he comes.
Okay. All right. So for everybody who's stuck with me so far, I'm going to summarize today's presentation on the primary attack mechanisms of COVID-19 and how they can be neutralized by ascorbic acid. Number one, the SARS-CoV-2 virus infect and replicate in lungs using spike protein that binds to ACE2 receptors. SARS-CoV-2 attacks heme using porphyrins as Trojan horses to infect the cells. Cell-free heme in the lungs caused damage to cell linings, and there was a brilliant study done not more than 2 years ago that actually showed that ascorbic acid can reverse and inhibit specific damages inflicted by cell-free heme in lung tissues. That is why I say, people, when you are infected, take ascorbic acid, because even if you have cell-free heme, it's not going to destroy your lung cells because you have enough ascorbic acid. Take this message home. Next one. Cell-free heme do not carry oxygen. And the lack of oxygen activates the hypoxia pathways that can increase urine enzymes that will activate more COVID-19 virus as well as pro-inflammatory cytokines. And only ascorbic acid can prevent the stabilization of the HIF-1 alpha complex to maintain furin enzyme homeostasis. Now, there are some studies that are talking about furin enzyme inhibition, and I think that's a wrong approach, because furin enzymes are necessary to maintain other biomolecules like growth hormones, cell receptors. You cannot be without furin enzymes. What you need is a balance, and ascorbic acid will balance it. Cell-free heme destroys nitric oxide at 1,000 times faster than normal heme. Now, this destruction of nitric oxide will lead to the depletion of ascorbic acid as it is required for BH4 regeneration. Just imagine, all of a sudden, your body is drastically low on nitric oxide. So all your cells that normally make nitric oxide is going to say, where's my ascorbic acid? I need more nitric oxide. And everybody starts grabbing ascorbic acid. And this is where ascorbic acid starts to become low. And that is also why in cell-free heme, they're found to deplete ascorbic acid. And when your immune cells are out of ascorbic acid, good luck to you. So this depletion of ascorbic systemic depletion of ascorbic acid will affect all immune white blood cells, including macrophages, neutrophils, and lymphocytes that depend on ascorbic acid recycling to produce nitric oxide, NADPH, and glutathione. Now, increased ferritin results from increased macrophages produced in the liver that capture free iron dislodged by the COVID-19 viral porins. Liver damage, uncontrolled release of NLRP3 inflammasomes, and the increased secretion of cytokines continue when these monocyte-derived macrophages produced by the liver cannot be destroyed with the negative feedback loop using nitric oxide oxidative bursts. Increasing ascorbic acid will allow macrophages to produce these lethal oxidative bursts that kill not only COVID-19 virus, but their own parents, the monocytes. And then that effectively stops the cytokine storm. It's like you have macrophages going, boom, I kill everybody. Okay, I'm done, finished. That's how normal immune systems respond. And that is why when you have a cold or a flu, if you take ascorbic acid, you heal faster, you get well faster, because these inflammatory responses end faster. Lack of glutathione causes functional exhaustion of lymphocytes. Increasing oral ascorbic acid increases glutathione levels by raising G6PD expression, leading to more NADPH production, and increased glutathione results in normalized lymphocyte count, which is very, very important in COVID-19 patients. Now, the lack of nitric oxide and glutathione limits the ability of neutrophils to migrate and to produce lethal oxidative bursts. And without NADPH, neutrophils are unable to generate superoxide to kill pathogens using extracellular traps. Ascorbic acid can increase nitric oxide, NADPH, and glutathiones in neutrophils that support their function so that they can kill those nasty SARS-CoV-2 viruses. So that is why I believe that combined use of oral ascorbic acid and intravenous sodium ascorbate is the perfect two-pronged strategy to attack COVID-19. Do you want me to continue, or is Dr. Wagers?
No, go ahead. Keep going.
Keep going? Okay.
Yeah.
Now, based on this new research, I'm revising my dosage recommendations because apparently everybody depends on ascorbic acid, especially immune cells. And immune cells is where immune dysfunctions leading to fatality happens in COVID-19 patients. Now, I must emphasize the following are recommendations for initial COVID-19 infection and should not be regarded as medical advice. So, if you just got infected and the cytokine storm hasn't started, you can take an initial dose of 3 grams, followed by 1 to 2 grams every hour, depending on you can see how well your chest feels, if it's starting to feel looser, if you can breathe. And you can repeat this cycle every 8 hours until you are completely without symptoms. Once you are symptom-free, please go back on the maintenance routine of 1 to 2 grams per hour for a total of 8 to 12 grams per day. But mind you, make sure when you are symptom-free and you go back on your maintenance dose to take a higher level of ascorbic acid than before you were infected. Because if you got infected and you show symptoms, that means your ascorbic acid level was not high enough. Now, this is recommendations for severe COVID-19 infections and should not be regarded as medical advice. I have to be clear, it's not medical advice. Now, the initial dose, when you have severe COVID-19, 3 to 5 grams, depending on severity. And then you need to follow by 2 grams of ascorbic acid every 30 minutes. And if your fever, breathing distress, myalgia do not improve in 3 to 4 hours, repeat the cycle again with 3 to 5 grams of ascorbic acid followed by 2 grams every 30 minutes. Repeat the cycle for 12 hours. And within 12 hours, you don't think you're improving, up the initial dose to 10 grams, followed by 3 to 5 grams every 30 minutes. By this time, you should be fine. Once your condition improves and stabilizes, you can go back to 2 grams every hour instead of every 30 minutes. Now, some people have reported that as soon as their ascorbic acid level drops, the shortness of breath symptoms returns immediately. So if that should happen to you, as soon as you say, oh my God, I can't breathe, take a hammer dose of ascorbic acid, 3 to 5 grams, just down the hatch. Now, during critical infections, you will essentially have an unlimited tolerance for ascorbic acid. Your tolerance can increase to more than 100 grams without any issues. And that is actually normal because doctors in the past have used ascorbic acid in amounts of over 200 grams to treat viral pneumonia. Okay, this is what I recommend for intravenous sodium ascorbate and should not be regarded as medical advice. Now, intravenous delivery of vitamin C, it must be buffered to match physiological pH. Most standard intravenous solutions use sodium ascorbate, which is ascorbic acid combined with sodium bicarbonate. The pH of pure ascorbic acid is just way too low for plasma delivery. Now, intravenous delivery of sodium ascorbate, to me, is a really excellent way to support the liver, which is now working overtime to produce huge amounts of haptoglobin-carrying macrophages. And the high systemic oxidative stress from pro-inflammatory cytokines can be attenuated by IV sodium ascorbate delivered continuously. Now, the continuous delivery of IVC during waking hours, to me, should be given at the rate of 500 milligrams to 1 gram per hour, depending on severity. This high amount is necessary because the body cannot reuse or regenerate sodium ascorbate in case the individual cannot ingest ascorbic acid. So this is what I think. Combine oral ascorbic acid and IVC as perfect treatment for COVID-19. Oral ascorbic acid plus IVC is a powerful two-pronged attack. IV sodium ascorbate supports haptoglobin regeneration. IV sodium ascorbate provides electrons as an antioxidant, and IV sodium ascorbate frees ascorbic acid to support heme regeneration and immune cell functions. And oral ascorbic acid, as I showed you today, actually stops cytokine storms. Thank you very much. That's the end of the presentation today.
Wow. That's all I could say. Doris, I mean, amazing. I mean, the feedback I'm getting is so high, and I'm finally mind blown because I just watched your summaries, and they're so methodical and meticulous, and I appreciate you. And I know the audience.
I haven't eaten or slept.
The audience is going to appreciate you. So let me just introduce Dr. Kenneth Wilgers at the bottom. Kenny, how you doing, brother?
Good. How you doing, Jay? Hey, Doris.
So
Hi,
guys,
Ken. How are you?
Just real quick, Ken wrote an article for my site. What was it, like 2 weeks ago, I think? Time is all stopped now. I don't think any of us keep time anymore. But Ken wrote an awesome article. I posted it in the group chat right now, so you guys can link to it. At 3 o'clock today, my copywriters are writing right now a summation of this, and it's going to go out. So if you're not on my list and you want to get stuff that'll be like a cheat sheet that you can share, it's join.jccampbell.com. It's totally free, but please sign up for it so you get access to it. With that said, I'm going to take questions and answers right now. Obviously, anything that's medical, Ken is going to answer to the best of his abilities. Ken, what is your summation of what Doris just put together?
Well, this is the reason why this is the third session like this I've been on with her, because I'm amazed also. The amount of work and the amount of research that she's compiled and organized, this is unprecedented. I have not seen this mass of information put together in such a way that people can understand it like this before. I think it's great. I think, I think mainstream medicine is completely crazy to not just jump on this. I see people dying that shouldn't be, because nobody's doing this once they get in the hospital. I think one of my values here will be
joke. That's a joke, by the way.
Yeah. So I think one of my values today is going to be to ask the correct questions of Doris too, that maybe somebody else isn't thinking about. That one slide you had, Doris, that was ascorbic acid versus oral sodium ascorbate, correct?
Yes. Let me go to it.
Okay, because that was one of the questions I had was, is oral sodium ascorbate absorbed as sodium ascorbate in the blood, just like IV.
Yes.
So people that don't have access to IV can take both orally, correct?
Yes, but the thing is, if they have ascorbic acid, there is no need to take sodium ascorbate orally.
Right.
Because,
okay. Because I was just saying, at the end, you always summarize with the combination is the best.
But yes, IV, because if you are that critical, all your functions are slowed and not at their best. So you need something directly into your blood, like sodium ascorbate, that will give you enough electrons to keep you going.
Okay.
And to contain the damage by cell-free heme. And haptoglobin, they need antioxidants, they need electrons to stabilize the free heme. And sodium ascorbate is the perfect antioxidant for that.
But you don't want to waste your GI tolerance for vitamin C by taking sodium ascorbate. You want to all ascorbic acid orally. Okay.
Exactly.
I get it now, because part of me was thinking, well, why in the world wouldn't we be doing that orally also?
No, because this is just a comparison. Just a comparison that sodium ascorbate is not taken up the same way. I personally think that because of the acidity difference, ascorbic acid is transported by SVCT1 and sodium ascorbate is transported by SVCT2. And that's why you see the difference.
Correct. Okay.
And if you take sodium ascorbate together with ascorbic acid, you're going to mess up the absorption of ascorbic acid because the pH is changed.
Correct.
Okay, guys, there's a ton of questions. I'm going to ask both of you guys. Obviously, medical stuff, I'll defer to Ken.
Sure.
Just for legal purposes, because Doris and I are only Google doctors.
Yes.
Because they're listening. Have you guys noticed the audio interference throughout this?
Yeah.
Amazing. They didn't shut us down. Okay, here we go. First question. This is for Kenneth for sure. And obviously, this is a really important question. It's being asked by people all over the world. Why are the tests showing false, again, the test for COVID that people are running to get, which is obviously stupid in itself if you're going to an urgent care center and you're healthy, right? But the tests are showing false positives and false negatives. Do you have an answer as to why that is happening?
Well, first of all, I answered something. I can't remember who sent it to me. Some guy did a video and talked about how the COVID tests, the PCR tests, were not reliable, and that they're testing for all these other COVID viruses. All these coronaviruses and SARS and MERS and all of the benign coronaviruses, and that it just cross reacts. That's the exact same methodology we use to extract DNA from a crime scene and convict someone and put them in prison for the rest of their lives. It's extremely precise. Putting a new virus on the map 2 months ago doesn't redo the whole process. You just figure out what the signature of that virus looks like, and then you do the exact same test and see if that virus signature pops up. So I don't see, false negatives, of course, sampling, if there's a problem with sampling, if there's a problem with transporting the sample, the medium, there's very, very specific, and I don't understand why they did this, but there's one very specific medium that these samples have to be transmitted in. And it's my knowledge that there's only 2 places in the world that make this medium, and one of them is in Italy. And so that's one of the problems we had the shortage to begin with. But again, if you're in the wrong medium, you transport the specimen incorrectly, you collect it incorrectly, you can have a negative when somebody's positive. I'm not aware of or can't understand why there would ever be a false positive in the PCR test. There very well could be asymptomatic positives.
That's what I know very well
exist.
That's what I was just going to say. Because I've actually had people, by the way, great answer. I've had people say to me, dude, I know that I had it. I read your stuff. I've been paying attention. I've read all of Doris's articles. I literally at 103 degree temperature for 4 or 5 days in a row. I was lethargic, vertigo, everything, dry cough. And then I went and got tested when my fever broke and I was negative. Right. So it's like, I think you're right. It's a sampling process to an urgent care center. Okay. That's a good enough answer. Let me get through some of these other ones. You guys see that one? I love it. Bill Gates is trying to hack the audio. Okay. I could just post them. So I'm getting good comments too. It says, Doris, you were born for these interviews, becomes more clear. Now we can go back to your articles with a greater understanding. Guys, honestly, huge round of applause for Doris. She was phenomenal in this presentation. I mean, you really were. Like, I didn't feel like one time. I mean, it's very technical stuff. And I didn't feel like one time. And I always go by the audience, and the audience stayed at over 200 people the whole entire time. And people are still listening right now. So, I mean, you were amazing. So congratulations.
Wow, thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, so here's a good one. And obviously this is for you, Ken. So do we stop iron supplementation at this time? Do we stop taking ACE inhibitors?
The ACE inhibitor one, that's been debated. And let me tell you, in my article, I looked at the opinion article that was published in Lancet. There were like 4 references in that article, and it was a very scientifically sound argument that said, ACE inhibitors, ARBs, increase expression of ACE2 receptors. The virus enters via ACE2 receptors, so it's probably not a good idea. And then there was this combined position statement, which is what medical societies typically do. And it was like the American Heart Association, the American College of Cardiology, European Heart Association, one of the nephrology associations came out, and the only reference they had for their article was the reference article from Lancet that they were bashing. And they said, there's no evidence for this. Don't stop your ACEs and ARBs. But they didn't give any evidence for that. They didn't refute any of those scientific arguments. I would say, not without the advice of your doctor, because you stop that and switch to something else, it could affect your blood pressure. It could affect, different things. But certainly talk to your doctor about it. Ask them. It's probably a good idea to get off of those things to stop the upregulation of the ACE2 receptors.
Exactly. And by the way, just to add to that, I just did a presentation with Dr. Anthony J., the Mayo Clinic researcher, on Friday, and he said the same thing. He said, look, I can tell you from those, those angiotensin receptors that if you have an extreme sensitivity to this and you get this, coin flip, bad news, right? So I think you're right. And again, obviously don't counter the advice of your physician that's treating you, but I'm in agreement with you. So here's a good one.
And as far as the iron supplementation, Doris and I have had a little conversation on this on Facebook, but, iron has a lot of benefits. There are some routes where iron, helps with post-production thyroid, different things that you need for general health. And if you need iron, I don't think it would be wise to stop it, possibly after you get sick. But I don't know if Doris has a comment on supplemental iron, whether it would be plus or minus in what she's talking about today with the cell-free heme. I don't think it's going to be a problem.
Absolutely. The issue with iron is actually what form it is in. If it is oxidized, it cannot carry oxygen. But you need it in the reduced form to carry oxygen. And if you are iron deficient, you won't get it in any form, and you absolutely won't have enough heme to carry oxygen. So the question is not whether you should supplement with iron, but whether you are supplementing iron with ascorbic acid, because ascorbic acid maintains the iron in the reduced form that can carry oxygen. And this is actually something I talked about in a series that contains 3 articles several months, maybe half a year ago. It's the HIF Oxygen Iron series on cancer. And the relationship between ascorbic acid and cancer, and iron goes back over 3 billion years. Iron and ascorbic acid are joined at the hip. And that is why this COVID-19 virus that attacks heme and changes the iron is totally connected to ascorbic acid.
Okay.
Yes, and the thing is, remember that paper that I talked about from the Chinese scientists that discovered that the ORF3A viral attacks heme?
Yeah.
At one point in that paper, they said, we believe this virus is an ancient virus that attacks heme. Ancient.
Wow.
Yes. Not a bioweapon, Jay.
Oh, God, I don't know about that. Anyway, it's very intricate. So please advise on how to prevent diarrhea from taking ascorbic acid, if at all possible.
I missed the question.
The question is it possible to prevent, loose stool diarrhea?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
The short answer.
No. Now, if you actually get loose stool when you take ascorbic acid, that's a good sign because you're not sick.
Right.
Yep.
But if you for some reason need to take ascorbic acid and you're getting loose stool, bowel intolerance, it's because your stomach acid is not low enough. It's not acidic enough. So what happens to ascorbic acid? When it is in a high pH environment, it loses the protons. Instead of like in the stomach where the stomach acidity is supposed to be low, ascorbic acid will be transported by the transporters very easily. But if your stomach acid is not low enough, it will start losing protons, and protons are acidic. So all of a sudden, you are having a lot of acid in your stomach and you get discomfort. So what I tell people to do is please take an acidic beverage, such as 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar and 2 to 3 ounces of warm water. Usually once is enough. You take it with your ascorbic acid is going to be transported, and you can take ascorbic acid without any discomfort. It's worked like a charm for everyone who asked me.
Wow, Doris never lets us down. Finally,
nah.
finally a place in the world where people can actually take apple cider vinegar.
Yes. And if you are a really bad case, you can take it twice. That'll do it. I've never had people have to take it more than twice.
Okay, very good. Did you want to add something to that, Ken?
No, what I said was that the easy answer to the question was get sick.
Yeah.
Then you won't have diarrhea. As Doris mentioned earlier, and she's personally seen patients who could normally not tolerate more than about 2 to 4 grams of ascorbic acid. When they got ill, could tolerate up to 100.
Yes.
And
the people were telling me, they said, it's crazy. I'm taking like 100 grams and nothing is happening.
Yeah.
I'm going, okay.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, your body's immunity, it has the ability to tolerate or handle a lot more from a deamination standpoint,
when you're under attack, every cell in your body says, gimme.
Right. Yeah. Okay, cool. Let's keep going. So this is a good one. So dosage for kids. What would you guys recommend from a dosage for children?
Okay, I'm going to actually put together another protocol because I've set that for kids. And with this new information, I have to think about what kids really can handle.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying anything now.
Okay, my short answer would be vitamin C is not going to hurt kids as much as they can tolerate. If they're actually getting sick, you're not going to hurt them with vitamin C, as much as they can tolerate.
I think they can tolerate 1 gram an hour without any problem, or 1 gram every 30 minutes if they are seriously sick. Yes. The trick is when you are really, really ill, you can do a dose every 30 minutes.
Right.
And if your symptoms do not improve, you double the dose in 30 minutes, and that should take care of it.
Awesome answer. Okay, so forms of ascorbic acid, is liposomal any better from a bioavailability standpoint in your guys' opinions?
Most liposomal ascorbic acid is not ascorbic acid. Liposomal vitamin C is sodium ascorbate. So no, it's not the form you want.
Okay.
Thank you.
So where are you recommending, guys? Where is the best form? I mean, again, obviously none of us are shilling vitamin C or anything like that, but where is the best form that's widely available. I mean, obviously nothing is widely available, I think, at this point. Right?
Yeah, they're all out of stock for some reason.
Yeah. But I mean, you guys have a preferred brand or preferred product that we could talk or refer people to?
Okay. Now, vitamin C, most of it is made in China. And I would trust.
Doris.
I'm sorry. Now,
how much will be coming out of there?
Yeah, it's all made in China. All made in China. And what distinguishes one brand from another is the purity. And as we all know, purity is QC. And I would just go with a bigger company because they have better QC and, they control the quality of their product. I'm not going to endorse a brand here.
I will. What I've got sitting on my shelf in the other room is from the vitamin shop. And it says ascorbic acid, and it's ascorbic acid.
It's just ascorbic acid. It's really cheap.
Yeah,
it's like $14 US a pound.
Okay, well, I will tell everybody that 2 days ago, a big international distributor of vitamin C and chaga mushroom reached out to me and said, hey, I know you've been talking about it. I know you're interviewing Doris on Friday. Let's talk. I might have an ability to create a bulk purchase opportunity for people all over the world. He's obviously big. He's in Australia. I don't know his name, actually. He just emailed me. We had a couple of conversations via email. So with that said, if I can get something, there's no profit margin or incentive in this. It will literally be to distribute to you guys in the biggest dosage or biggest bulk format possible. So more to come on that. There's a lot of questions.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's
awesome. For sure. I'm going to let everybody know. So, okay. So there's a lot of questions here. Would it be a good idea to increase food sources of iron, especially if anemic, at least if not currently infected? It's a great question.
I'll let Ken answer that.
And if you're anemic, you need to be doing more than food sources of iron. Of course, you need to be supplementing with iron. There's really no drawback to iron supplementation. And like Dora said, as long as you're taking it with ascorbic acid, but especially if you're anemic, I'd be doing more than food sources. I'd be taking some type of an iron supplement.
Yes.
What about?
I have one suggestion. There are iron supplements that are in the ferric form. Do not use them.
There's Bill Gates again. What did you say? Repeat what you said. Sorry.
Yes, there are iron supplements that are in the ferric form. And I did some research when I was doing the HIF series. These ferric form iron supplements have been found to cause cancer. So look at your label, see what kind of iron. If it's ferrous iron sulfate or whatever combination, it has to be combined and buffered. But do not buy ones that says ferric iron.
Right. All right. So here's
that's all. And then take your iron with ascorbic acid.
So here's a question for somebody on dialysis. Can they use high dose ascorbic acid? They already have kidney failure. So sounds like if they get it, they're probably in trouble. But what are you guys answering on that?
I don't see any reason why not.
No, absolutely.
I don't know of any reason why high dose ascorbic acid would affect the kidneys adversely.
No, it would only help the kidneys.
Okay, so this is also a good question. I think this is going to go on for a couple months. Yeah, guys, in 3 weeks, they're not going to turn the light switch back on and everything's back to normal and your stock portfolio is going back to 30,000 on the Dow. Just FYI. But anything we should be concerned about regarding long-term use of ascorbic acid prophylactically and maybe potentially any other nutrient?
No, you get younger and more beautiful and have more energy and healthier.
Exactly. It's clear, Doris. You've been using 10 grams a day for what? The last, I mean, you're 230 years old, right? That's what you told me.
How'd you know?
You're an ancient
My secret's
Chinese
out.
You're
My
an ancient
secret's
Chinese
out.
dragon in human form.
No, you can't tell anyone that. You're not supposed to.
It's just because I'm 1 day younger than you. Okay, come on. Okay, so yeah, magnificent talk is right. Absolutely amazing. Okay, so here's something I didn't even read. I'm just putting it up for you guys. conflicting effects of vitamin C on interferon. In some cases, it increases it, in others, it decreases it. Therefore, it's difficult to predict whether vitamin C would make things better or worse during the inflammatory destruction of the lungs that happens with SARS and the new coronavirus. What do you guys think about this? What's up, Omar?
Who's answering this?
So I'll just say up front, this virus is different than almost anything we've ever seen before.
Right.
A lot of things that we have used traditionally as across the board antivirals may work adversely with this virus. You really have to look at the science like Doris has done. And, everything we've seen so far with all the benefits of vitamin C, it doesn't have anything to do with interferon.
Yes, correct.
And it essentially effectively kills this virus. And so, no, I think, vitamin C is indispensable.
Right.
And whatever con there is out there, the pros far outweigh it.
Right. And I would like to add a little bit of information is I think these studies were in vitro studies. And you can basically get any type of results in an in vitro study. And end of comment.
Okay, so there's some really good ones here. Are you guys okay to keep going answering questions?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, cool.
I just got here. I'm good.
Beautiful. Honestly, I have so many comments that said Doris is amazing. I'm not posting them all, but believe me, it's unstoppable. This is amazing. I'm just trying to find the best questions because there's a lot of them. Wow, they just popped in as I was scrolling down, so I apologize, guys, but I realize now there's so many good questions. Okay, so Doris, you were originally recommending. Okay, before I get there, I think it's right here. You were originally recommend. Well, I'll answer that next. I'll have you answer it next. So, asthmatics and those with COPD, which obviously this is going to affect. Anything different?
No, absolutely not. Jay, one thing we all need to understand is ascorbic acid has been around for over 3 billion years. That means it's with living organisms during every step of evolution. Everything that happened during evolution happened together with ascorbic acid. So how can ascorbic acid be contraindicated for anything? It just does not make sense.
So you see that question. Great answer. Are you still recommending, because I know in one of your articles you talked about melatonin. Are you still talking about melatonin with these?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, gosh,
Ascorbic acid and melatonin, they both go back more than 3 billion years, except to me, ascorbic acid and melatonin, they're two sides of the same coin, or the yin and yang of life.
Right.
So I'll get you thinking about that. One is the daytime and one is the nighttime, and they cannot be without each other.
Again, amazing. Yeah. There's so many.
Melatonin, it directly inhibits the NLRP3.
Yes.
It also inhibits something called calmodulin, which actually can stop the virus from interacting with the ACE2 receptor. Melatonin, why not give vitamin C some help?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. And
are you guys both familiar with what's his name? Kenneth Russell, right? The vitamin C guy. I'm older than dirt. Have you ever talked to him, Doris? He's amazing.
No, I have not. I have had the pleasure.
150 milligrams a day.
Really? Oh my God.
Yeah, he's an amazing.
That's amazing.
Melatonin researcher. Okay, here's another one. Does the use of alpha lipoic acid help to regenerate ascorbic acid?
Okay, this one is a good one because alpha lipoic acid has been found in rodent studies to regenerate ascorbic acid. Now, mice, as we all know, they make ascorbic acid, and they have a totally different pathway than humans. So the fact that alpha lipoic acid can regenerate ascorbic acid in mice does not necessarily mean that it will do the same thing in humans. Now, there is another study that showed that alpha lipoic acid must be in the form of DHLA that has an extra electron to be able to regenerate ascorbic acid in humans. So if you buy alpha lipoic acid, some of them will be in that DHLA form.
Very,
So
very.
you need to get it in that form for it to be useful. But don't get me wrong, alpha lipoic acid is a wonderful antioxidant. But the thing is, you don't need expensive supplements to regenerate ascorbic acid. Ascorbic acid is generated by the cheapest molecule, NADH. Eat any glucose carbohydrate, you end up with NADH. And if you're deficient in NADH, take some niacin. That's all you need.
So who is Carolyn Lundberg? Proud to have been in the same graduating class in 1974 from Dobbs?
Yes. She's one of my classmates, I guess, 1974 Dobbs. Yeah, master school.
There you go. Okay, I didn't know who that was, so I just wanted to put that up there. They keep asking brands. It doesn't matter. Get ascorbic acid. Oh, here's
just anyone. Now there is a brand that I like myself called Now Foods. It's cheap.
Yep.
It says non-GMO and pharmaceutical grade, and that is all I want. That's fine.
There you go.
Yeah.
I love that. Non-pharmaceutical grade, non-GMO. It doesn't have Bill Gates' signature on the back in the legalese, okay?
Yeah, pharmaceutical grade, non-GMO. It went from $38 for, I think, 3 pounds to $41.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's really cheap. I mean, that's the cheapest thing to keep you healthy.
Gotta love capitalism. Okay. Is ascorbic acid enough to protect from COVID-19 and also manage histamine intolerance and or mast cell issues? That's probably for you, Ken.
Sounds like it's for Doris. But I think I would say
no, absolutely.
I would say yes, but she's probably the mechanism.
Right. Yeah, ascorbic acid has been found to lower histamines. Absolutely. Sometimes when I sniffle, I just pop 2 ascorbic acids and it's gone.
Okay. Okay, here's one. I'm just posting this for you. High doses does not work with people with EGFR rates less than 90.
I think that's for Ken.
I don't know that it would affect it at all. Really?
I mean, you wouldn't think so, because again, she showed in the slides the rapid assimilation. So
yeah, it's GI absorption, and then everything. It doesn't specifically work in the kidney, so I don't see there'd be a problem with it.
Right. In fact, I have readers, because people say that ascorbic acid can cause kidney stones and hurt your kidneys, and I have people coming in and say, I have my family, so-and-so, they have kidney disease and they've been taking high dose ascorbic acid and they're fine. In fact, they got better.
Yeah.
So somebody said to please Jay, and I will, of course, link Doris's older interview that she did on Redox. And she said he doesn't remember who you did it with. Isn't that what you did it with the biohacker people, right? Or
Boomer Anderson. Anderson. He's awesome.
Yeah. Boomer's actually a friend of mine on Facebook. Okay, hold on one second. I'm sorry, you guys. There are so many questions. I'm just attempting to pull the best ones up. Doris, are you spritzing with hypochlorous acid recommended by Dr. Klinghardt? Thank you for your work.
I try not to use things that are not used naturally by the body. But I'm sure Dr. Klinghardt has excellent reasons for recommending the usage. And since I have not researched that thoroughly, I will refrain from making comments.
So Ken, he agrees, whoever this Dr. Dietrich Klinghardt is, he agrees with what you already said. He's been saying to change ARB drugs and get off ACE inhibitors for
weeks.
But ARBs can increase expression of ACE2 also.
Now, Ken, I've been thinking about the ARBs and the ACI inhibitors. from this new research that shows the main destructive mechanism is actually targeted at heme, I now think that ACE2 receptor binding is actually secondary. Now, considering those people with hypertension and cardiovascular diseases, when the heme, the cell-free heme, decimates nitric oxide, it's going to affect them. Now, the first thing that's going to affect them, and if they are off the ACI inhibitors, that's going to even hurt them more. So I am actually rethinking this whole ACI inhibitor thing, because it could be not a good idea because of the way cell-free heme destroys nitric oxide.
Okay, but one of the things that I was looking at was, I think it was an NIH study showing that like 12% of patients who died from COVID-19 that did not have pre-existing cardiovascular disease showed substantial heart damage at autopsy. And that may have a lot to do with the ACE2 receptor also.
Right. That's by the way, that's actually what Anthony was intimating on Friday when we spoke about that too. I mean, basically, if you're one of those people that have those receptor sensitivity of those angiotensin receptors or angiotensin receptors, you have, like you said, it's a coin flip if it gets into the lungs, unfortunately. So again, a very nasty disease, but like Dora said, it's ancient, and I'll just say it's a bioweapon.
An ancient bioweapon.
An ancient bioweapon. Right. Actually, it could be. I mean, they thin the herd every 100 years. Oh, that's another top podcast. Sorry, not here. Okay, let's see.
You know what I think? Our environment, with EMF, it just decimates ascorbic acid, and it also kills melatonin. This is like the perfect storm for this.
Earth is
perfect setting for this virus.
You're right. Earth is revolting. She's like, I've had enough. I've had enough.
Yep. But so if you take ascorbic acid and melatonin, you're going to be fine.
It's awesome. All right, there's so many, guys. I apologize. I'm just scrolling through here. Can you comment clarity on whether ascorbic acid should or should not be taken with meals? If not, how far away? It's probably a pretty decent question. I mean, does it with food or without?
I don't think it matters, but there are people with stomach acid problems.
Right.
If they take it with meals, they get very uncomfortable and they get reflux. If that is happening to you, take it away from meals. If you don't feel anything, you can take it anytime. I mean, yeah. It doesn't matter. I would actually suggest meals, because if you eat foods that contain non-heme iron, ascorbic acid is critical to change those non-heme ferric iron into ferrous iron so that the transmembrane enzymes can take up the ferrous iron. That's why people who are anemic, they probably don't have enough ascorbic acid.
There's, you guys, I apologize because evidently these questions are like coming in bulk. And so like I scroll through them and I don't find them. And now all of a sudden like 50 more. And there's, I'm attempting to pick the best ones. What is the sweet spot dosage of melatonin?
For what age? Everybody's different.
Yeah, if you're watching
for an 80-year-old, for a 40-year-old, for a 30-year-old, give me an age.
Yeah, just respond back in with the age, and we'll give you a better answer. Well, actually, just give a under 40, over 40.
Okay, under 40. And it depends on your light environment at night. If you have good light hygiene during this infection period, I would suggest, and if your sleep is good, I would suggest no more than 0.1 milligram or even 0.05 milligrams, because 1 milligram is 1 billion picograms. And the amount of melatonin in cells are measured by picograms. That's how teeny amount of melatonin will do to you. And that's why I have people saying, oh, I have friends who take melatonin per your advice and they're getting like nightmares and whatever. And I'm saying, like, how much are you taking? If you take 1 to 3 milligrams, you are going way over the physiological amounts. And for some people, that can give them nightmares. And you can wake up like groggy or whatever. Very tiny amount for people who do not have disrupted melatonin synthesis. And
Yeah.
if you're over 40, if you're sleeping well, it's different than if you're not sleeping well. I would say that for most people, when they are older and they're not sleeping well, they can usually get better sleep, uninterrupted sleep, by no more than 0.2 milligrams. So the upper limit during the maintenance phase when you are not infected is only 0.3. I would not go over 0.3 unless you're seriously messed up. Then you go to the 0.5, which I think is very unusual.
Yeah, you mentioned synthesis. There are people who do better or worse with this virus. That I've thought there's a polymorphism in the gene that for an enzyme called AANAT, which has to do with melatonin synthesis. And people that have a polymorphism for that don't produce melatonin correctly or efficiently, and they may do worse on this, and they might need more supplementation. But you don't know without checking a genetic test for that.
Correct. And there are people with polymorphisms in the receptors. And those people need to be careful, because I was telling them that if you are diabetic, you don't want to take melatonin during the daytime, because melatonin's function is actually at night to suppress insulin so that you have enough glucose in your blood. Right. So if you take melatonin during the daytime, if you're not infected, and if you are diabetic, it's really going to mess you up.
Yeah. I mean, I'm one of those people. It's like a very poor responder to melatonin. Like, it makes me so groggy. Like,
how much are you taking?
I barely wake up. No, I mean, literally, if I take like 1 or 2 milligrams, it really.
That's too much.
No, I know. I mean, I take even if I take like 0.25, it just has always made me feel like I said, just really like out of it. I mean, believe me, I sleep well, but it's just like, it's really difficult for me to wake up.
Yes, that can happen.
Yeah. Okay, so here's one. Hey, Jay, I'm curious. Immune boosters like elderberry have been implicated in cytokine storms. Does Doris know anything about this?
Yeah, I talked about elderberries with readers. This is not the first time they asked it. Now, elderberries is a great phytonutrient. It contains great phytonutrients, and it stimulates the immune system. Now, if you are taking ascorbic acid, stimulating immune systems could work for you. Now, everybody's immune system is different, I have to say. But from what I have presented today, you would understand that if you stimulate your immune system during a cytokine storm, you are only going to make it worse. So use elderberry carefully.
Okay, there you go. So vitamin C excess is excreted as oxalate. Is taking too much vitamin C lead to a rise in the oxalate in the urine, thus increasing the risk of kidney stones? There's so much nonsense, but I figured I'd put it up there.
Okay.
No.
Bye.
No. Yes. No is the answer. Okay. I've talked about the oxalates issue like for 2 years now, and people still are asking. Okay, oxalates. The reason why people associate ascorbic acid with oxalates is because it is one of the metabolites when ascorbic acid starts to degrade. It goes through many different forms, and then it gets to oxalate. But in the body, inside the body, in vivo, when you take ascorbic acid and it turns into DHA, if you are a normal person, the DHA is automatically going to disappear into all your cells. It never gets to degrade to that stage. And I had, in one of my papers, I believe it's the primordial octane field, where I showed a study where the scientists showed that in the blood, the DHA does not actually turn into oxalates. Now, there are people with really poor redox, and that could happen.
There you go.
But the really important thing about oxalates is it is not coming from ascorbic acid. It actually comes from glyoxos. And that is like a totally different subject, and it's very, very complex. But basically what it is everything you eat, carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, they can all turn into oxalates.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's basically what it is.
So I'm going to go ahead. Keep going.
If your pathways are in such a state, anything you eat can be turned into oxalates. And that's why people think it's from ascorbic acid. No, it really isn't.
Okay, so I'm going to be fair to you guys because these people can ask questions all day. So we're going to wrap this show up. We're going to wrap the show up right now.
Please, thank you.
Just final, real quick for people who have not, they don't have symptoms. And again, obviously you summarized this at the end, but obviously a lot of people have probably come on and they didn't see it. And again, if you're not a member of my email list or you don't go to the blog, you can go read Doris's articles. They're actually linked in today's article on my site. It's just jccampbell.com. Just go there. It's the first blog at the top of the page. Kenneth's blog is the last blog, or not the last blog, but 2 weeks ago blog. So it's really easy to find access to all of our information, guys, on these questions. But just right now, for a maintenance dosage for someone, not kids, because you're going to come up with that. What is, just to recap, what should someone be using, male and female, right now as a maintenance dosage with no symptoms?
Okay. Normally, when I suggest dosage for people, adults living in a big city, it's 6 grams. But because I think COVID-19 is actually going to hit everyone eventually. Right. There's no escaping.
Exactly.
I suggest you up your dose now. I don't think 6 grams is going to be enough. 6 grams, yeah. I would say take at least 8 to 12 grams. At least 8 grams, up it to 8 to 10. And if you get symptoms, that means it's not enough.
Right.
Yeah.
Kenneth, what about you on that, on that end, on that standpoint? I mean, again, a lot of people are going to have to adjust their dosage based on their tolerance, whether they get loose stool.
Right. And that, what she's saying seems absolutely reasonable. I've been saying, 3 or 4.
Right.
But that's coming from someone who's used to 2 being plenty.
Right.
This is new information for me. And I'm thinking as much as you can tolerate. I've told the people in my office, we do see some sick people coming through. We have had a couple of positives. And so everybody in my office is, we got a big old bowl of vitamin C there. And every time they're thinking about it, they're taking one. They're taking a gram 5 or 6, 7, 8 times a day while they're working.
Yes.
Anybody who's like a health person who's looked at vitamin C and, done things like vitamin C cleanses and all of that, they'll understand that, when you do this vitamin C cleanse, you're supposed to take vitamin C every 20 minutes until you start having diarrhea to cleanse your colon. And it's kind of been generally accepted that the more it takes, the less healthy you are. Because and that's the same thing with this. When you have more inflammation in the body, you're going to consume more vitamin C and you're going to tolerate more vitamin C.
That's exactly right.
When you clean out your inflammation, somebody might take 3 or 4 grams and explode because they don't have that inflammation.
So true story. I really can't take more than 3 grams of vitamin C because I'm super optimized, bro. I had to throw that in there. Again, you guys, truly, Doris, I have so much love in my heart for you. This was such a profound. If you're watching this, please, and I know a lot of you guys have, and you will watch this in the rerun, please forward this to loved ones, share this on your social media. there's so much profound information. Like I think from like 59 minutes to about 108 is when you dropped all the recommendations and put all that. I'm going to have my team edit that and make some bursts of your info, and I'll send it to you, of course. And so you can share it with your fans and everyone that follows you and stuff like that too, because I think you hit everything as far as how this should be used in this current time. But, you know, just to recap, what you said is important. Everyone on this planet with a heartbeat and a soul is most likely going to experience this at some point in time. So it's up to you. And as Kenneth and I have been talking, and Doris and I have been talking off air, if the system, unfortunately, and again, this is not fear, but if the system, meaning the medical system, our beautiful sick care system, stops functioning, then it's up to you. And this information here today is going to keep you alive and keep your loved ones alive, your family alive.
Right. And I'll add one more thing. Not only that, right now the system is flooded, overwhelmed, and collapsing. And if you protect yourself with ascorbic acid, you will alleviate the pressure. When people, they get, the whole point about ascorbic acid is you get COVID, you take it, it becomes a garden variety flu. Seriously.
That's exactly right. That's exactly
and pretty soon, everybody's going to get it. And if everybody is protected by vitamin C, it will become a non-event. It will just become a memory of the distant past. And this is the reason why I am working night and day to get this information now. Because with ascorbic acid, COVID-19 is nothing.
Do you know what our biggest challenge is, those of us who are actually seeing patients and dealing with people with this, is that we've been so brainwashed in this country that if it doesn't come from the pharmacy, you know, it doesn't work. And, and, you know, if it's not on a prescription, it's not strong enough. And there are people out there that I hammer this information every day. Take your vitamin C, take your vitamin C. And they glaze over. And as soon as I'm done talking, they go, well, do you think I'm going to be able to get a hold of some hydroxychloroquine if I get sick?
It's so true.
It's like, you know, this is better. Take this. You won't need that.
Ken, I want you to just, before we end, share this, tell people what the side effects from HCQ is.
Well, you know, the crazy thing is they talk about all these side effects, and I've been in practice for over 20 years, and I have I did a lot of mainstream medicine up until 7 or 8 years ago. And I still have a lot of patients that see rheumatologists that have rheumatoid arthritis and other things that are taking hydroxychloroquine in pretty good sized doses. And I have never had a patient tell me any side effect that they've had from it.
That's good then, because I've heard the opposite. I've heard of some,
you know, for the number of days you need for this, it shouldn't be a problem.
That's good then. That's good.
The side effect of COVID-19 is death. So
there you go.
I will take the hydroxychloroquine.
You guys, man, again, love you guys both. Thank you so much for coming on. You guys, again, let me just say, share this podcast with as many people as you can. Again, people that you love, people that you care for, because as Doris is very, very elegantly stated, this is going to be, quote unquote, your savior as long as you're prepared and you have this in your home. So without further ado, remember, raise your vibration to optimize your love creation. We will see you.
Thank you, Jay.
Thanks, brother.